Hey everyone, Fina here from Fina Reads. Welcome and welcome back to my channel. This week on my channel is Stephen King week. There's not really a reason, although I could say I'm currently participating in a Stephen King themed readathon, so that's why I need to talk about Stephen King books. And I had two ideas swirling down around in my head, and instead of deciding which one of those two I'm going with, I decided I just put out videos for both ideas. The first one is the one that you're watching. The second one is coming out a little bit later this week, so don't forget to hit the subscribe button if you want to get more Stephen King related content. But for now, I want to talk about three of Stephen King's books that are maybe considered underdogs, maybe not reviewed as often, read as often, talked about as often. And if you've been around on my channel, you know I like to talk about books that are maybe not as well known, but should be talked about more often. And that's the same for these three Stephen King books that I think are phenomenal, but they either have very few Goodread ratings or they're never really mentioned on BookTube or other social media channels. So let's dive right on in, starting with The Institute, which has about 290,000 ratings over on Goodreads. That's still a lot less than his most popular works, like It has over 1 million, The Stand and Carrie have like around 700,000 ratings on Goodreads each. And while it has a 4.2 average rating on Goodreads, I never hear anyone talk about this book. The Institute is a place where teenagers are held with supernatural powers, think telekinesis and whatnot. But the thing is that these teenagers are not there voluntarily. They have been kidnapped from their home, and the way they are trying to draw out those supernatural abilities is not always in the nicest way. It is in a typical King manner, a rather devastating setting. It is full of teenagers, which personally I enjoy reading from Stephen King. He seems to be writing them very, very well, even though I'm not a teenager and even though I usually don't care about books with teenagers anymore. This, to me at least, feels like a little bit different type of Stephen King book in the sense of there is no jump scare type spooky horror happening in the book. It's not one of his psychological horror deep dive character type of works. This is more on the paranormal side and it's more plot driven. I enjoyed it because the pacing was great. I enjoyed it because, as I already said, the teenage characters were written very well. And I enjoyed, I don't know what that says about me that I enjoyed this particular part, but I enjoyed reading about the desperation of the teenagers. And The Institute, while maybe not a typical Stephen King book, is a great read with a fantastic story, with fantastic characters, and with a rather explosive ending as well. The next unpopular Stephen King book has roughly 160,000 ratings on Goodreads with an average review of 3.85, and that is Gerald's Game, a book that I have read at least 12 years ago, if not longer, and it was one of the first Stephen King books that I read. And even though it has been such a long time, this book stuck with me over the years because of its very specific storytelling and the vibe that it produced. Gerald's Game is about a married couple who wants to freshen up their marriage. It has been a bit stale lately, so they decide to take a short vacation and book a remote cabin in the side season, so there's no one around them, it's just them, and, well, have a little fun. She's a bit hesitant, and she isn't quite sure if that is something that she likes, but he is very positive that this will help their marriage. He ends up handcuffing her onto the bed, and a freak accident happens, and he ends up dead, while she is still handcuffed to the bed. It has been a little while, so I'm a little bit fuzzy on the exact details what happened, but I think it was something with she freaked out and kicked him off the bed, and instead of him getting back up again and helping her out of the handcuffs, he breaks his neck or something like that. So the book is about just her trying to get out of this situation. And what I enjoy about the book is that you have literally a very limited scenery. It's that one room you're in, that's it. And secondary, you feel her desperation. While you could argue, well, nothing really is happening, which is kind of true. I mean, it's just her in the bed handcuffed. It is incredibly fascinating to me how King describes this whole situation, how he puts you into a feeling of you sitting at the edge of your seat. It's like, oh my God, is she getting that glass of water off the shelf? And I don't think a lot of authors can do that with such a limited scene, such a limited plot, and make it into something so impactful. And as I said, yes, it has been more than 12 years that I read it, but I still remember that vibe. I still am sitting there, and when I think about it, remember how I felt when I read it. And I don't think there's another book out there where I can say the same thing about it. And then finally, the book that I think is completely underrated and completely misunderstood by a lot of Stephen King readers is Roadwork. I wanted to say by Stephen King, but that's kind of the whole point of this video. So it's Roadwork. This book has only 39,000 ratings on Goodreads with an average rating of 3.59. And the most common complaint that I keep hearing about the book is, well, nothing happens. And that's true, but we'll get to that in a second. So this book is about a person who has a regular boring life. They go to their job, they go home, eat, sleep, repeat. He is kind of okay with it. I wouldn't call it happy, but he's content with it. But now there's a highway being built through parts of the town that he lives in, which leads to him losing his job because the highway goes through where he works. I think it's like a laundry place, like business laundry place, and he is not okay with that. And instead of dealing with it, right, like a sane person might say, yeah, that sucks, but we'll figure out, or we figure out a new job, or we put the laundry place somewhere else, or whatever. He doesn't deal with it in a healthy manner. And this is one of those books where it's less about the plot and more about the character and watching him digging a deeper and deeper hole for himself and dealing with, the stages of grief except for acceptance. So you watch him be angry about it. You watch him try to bargain with people. You see him just sinking deeper and deeper into depression and doing irrational things. So in the sense of nothing really happens, this is correct for this book when it comes to the plot side of things, but this is, I believe, not meant to be a plot book, but really more a character-driven book where you observe someone, like a car accident where you can't look away from, where you observe someone slowly going crazy and doing just a bunch of bonkers shit. If you decide to give Roadwork a go, keep that in mind. Yes, it's boring from the plot, but it's this character work that is so incredibly well done and that for me, makes Stephen King such an exceptional author. What are books that you think should be on this list? What book do you think is the underdog of Stephen King books, is the most ignored book by Stephen King that people don't talk about or that people don't appreciate enough? Let us know down in the comments, because I want to know which other books I should be reading by Stephen King. And if you want to know all the books that I've read by Stephen King and how I rank them, don't forget to hit the subscribe button, because that is the second video that will come out later this week in my Stephen King week. And if you want to hear in general what my top 10 favorite sci-fi and fantasy books are, check out my top 10 list. I hope you have an amazing rest of your day and that I'll see you soon with another video. Bye!